Hey, welcome back, everybody. We are busting through this like wildfire. We got 2 segments left, and I really do want to talk about this awful situation in Europe. But I guess we had a couple of questions that some listeners wanted us to address here.
Well, first of all, Jason wants to ask: do you think that Mike Huckabee and Ted Cruz would be showing up if this particular Democratic clerk was Muslim?
No.
You don't think so at all?
Nope.
Well, like I said during the break, they're one and the same half the time. So I'm sure, if you're going to embrace a Democrat, might as well embrace a Muslim, right?
I'm sure there are Muslim Republicans.
Strangely enough, there's a bunch.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised.
I wouldn't be surprised.
And the other thing is, and I always thought Joni Ernst is a little bit of a in the old vernacular, she'd be a cowboy, but she's a little bit of a cowgirl in this. You'd be shocked at how conservative bikers are. We look like morons, but we're very conservative. The other thing is this is the kernel of the question comes from my brother Joe. Do you think that the Supreme Court is always right?
No.
Do you? All right. And if they're not right, what do you do? I mean, do you continue to challenge it? I mean, how long did it take to overturn Dred Scott? Dred
Scott's not this decision.
Well, I get it, but what I'm saying is how long did it take for that to happen? It took, from what I remember, decades. So, I mean, if you don't know, but that's
off the top of my head, I don't know,
but it took a darn long time. So the bottom line is the Supreme Court isn't always right. Mm-hmm. Supreme Court,
it's interesting. It's interesting that I would love to understand if there are decisions that your brother doesn't, and he can call in and ask me himself if he wants to, if your brother doesn't agree with politically, that he agrees with from a legal perspective, because it seems to me that there have been a couple of things over the last 10, 15 years that the Supreme Court has done that has overturned decades of precedent that I'm sure that he agrees with because of his political affiliation. And that, good, I guess. Agree with that stuff. For example, DC or Heller v. DC or City of DC v. Heller, the Second Amendment decision.
Yeah, but the thing is the people.
And guess
people don't stop fighting against that decision simply because they make it.
No one is saying stop fighting against it, but you have to accept the reality.
But how many times have I heard? Well, it's the law of the land. It's the law of the land. Let it go. We won. You lost. Go home.
Yeah.
How many times have I heard that from Democrats? All the time. I see it on Facebook all the time.
Yeah, and how many times have we heard it from Republicans when Democrats keep talking about gun control and talking about, hey, we're going to restrict your access to handguns? DC v. Heller, sorry, law of the land. Sorry, Second Amendment, law of the land. It's the same thing.
The Second Amendment is a lot different than creating laws over a period of time that include everybody and then suddenly going, oh, well, geez.
Creating laws over a period of time, once again, because you disagree with it. I'm sure an activist court that does things like Citizens United, or like I said, worked into, there is no articulable definition in the Second Amendment of a individual's right to bear arms. It's not in there. They created that. They interpreted that interpretation.
Because
they put
it shall
that in
not
there.
Be infringed.
They put that in there.
It shall not be infringed.
No, it was a collective right.
What part of that is not crystal clear? Shall not be infringed.
The verbiage is different than the first. You are talking about something completely off base. What I'm talking about, the Supreme Court. No, listen. Hold on. This is very important for me to mention this. The individual's right to bear arms is not textually guaranteed by the Second Amendment. That was written in by the Supreme Court in DC v. Heller. Up until that case, for years, for decades and decades and decades, the Second Amendment was read to mean that it guaranteed a collective right to bear arms, that the people, that the state, that a militia, that you could have this collective right to bear arms, okay? And that the state could regulate that right to bear arms fairly liberally. That's what it means. That's what I'm talking. You agree with that, so that activism you're okay with.
Well, because
that activism you're okay with.
Supreme Court was incorrect. Number two,
I
disagree with your interpretation of that.
Three, you can disagree, but I've read the case, man. That's exactly
the same case.
That's what it holds.
The problem is I don't have a JD behind my name, so you carry more weight. But the bottom line is, shall not be infringed is shall not be infringed.
That's not.
I mean, that's all there is to it.
That's not what. And I already went over. No, That's not what it means. That's not the difference. That's not what we're arguing about. That's not what we're arguing about at all. The fact that you have a fundamental right to bear arms.
Let me ask you this. If over a period of time they lowered the age of consent to the age of 14 and they did away with the 10-year rule, right?
Well, shouldn't you be okay with that? Because the states are doing it. If the states are doing it, that should be okay with you, right?
The problem is what if in those circumstances where gradually that age of consent has been lowered and suddenly everybody goes, well, yeah, it's okay to have sex with a 13-year-old, 14-year-old. I want to get married even though I'm 50 to this 14-year-old. Don't you think when somebody goes to issue a marriage license, they go, hold on, there's something wrong with this? You don't think at that point they go, well, geez.
Is there a religious passage that you can point to that says that's wrong? In fact, I think that happened in the Bible all the time, buddy.
It did, but what I'm talking about is
isn't that more
this gradual slippery slope down the immoral path?
Except that gradual slippery slope goes to put yourself in more line with the Bible than it does to get you away from it. Actually, what you just did was impose your own modern day morality on something that should be infallible. Am I wrong? Oh, I hope that's Joe.
We have a phone call.
I hope that's Joe.
You hope that's Joe? All right. Well, we only got a minute, though, before the next segment. So, is that my brother? Yeah. Go ahead, Joe.
Lay it on me, buddy.
Let's get one thing straight. The Cubs suck and always will. So
I know. I got nothing to say about that. Yeah. I don't.
You know, the problem is...
But I stand up for my beliefs and love them anyway.
We got 30 seconds till break, Joe.
Well, okay. I think you're missing the point here, Blake. The bottom line is that the Supreme Court has been so wrong on certain things. And, you know, Pat's not familiar with the Korematsu case. He's not familiar as perhaps you are, Dred Scott, Plessy versus Ferguson. These are such atrocious rulings that were twisted in logic. And I think Kennedy was twisted in his logic. And I think Scalia hit it on the head. And but that doesn't mean you don't keep fighting. And this lady is just saying, I'm not agreeable to that. And so she has her choice. She can make the choice she wants. And so she either accepts a job or not. I don't disagree with that. But she is saying, this is not what I believe in. And therefore, because it is such an atrocious ruling, I'm going to stand by my beliefs. Now, that's the way the United States works, at least in my United States. And she takes the brunt of her problem. But, you know...
So you don't disagree with the outcome. The consequence, contempt, is okay.
Yeah, if you don't follow the law, you get held in contempt because that is the law.
Mm-hmm.
But
I don't think we're really arguing that,
my problem is... Well, I know. But when you call my little brother Buddy, that's when I thought you were getting a little over the top and stuff. But these decisions are so bad on the Supreme Court in the history of all these things, and the Supreme Court is a political animal, and there's no doubt about it, and I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with the United thought process you have. I don't know where a corporation has ever been identified in the Constitution. Mm-hmm. So Citizens United, I agree with, and I do think the court has always been an activist court. It just depends on which side of the ruling you're on, but that doesn't mean that this lady should not continue the fight and everybody else continue the fight.
Oh, holy cow. I think the world stopped, and I think it just got really cold in here because Blake and my brother Joe simply agreed on something.
All I got is
I need the break to recover. We're going to be back right after this break. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Joe, if you want to stay tuned and talk with us about the Syrian refugee crisis in Europe, feel free. We're going to be back right after this break. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in.